Good morning, everyone. I hope you are all doing well. Today, I wanted to discuss a topic that is really quite near and dear to my heart, and that is finding magic in the mundane. I actually just filmed this intro and totally went on a rant. I started off not knowing what I wanted to do, but I ended up here, and now I'm starting over to be more concise. But ever since lockdown, over a year ago, we have been living by the phrase, finding magic in the mundane. It has been our key phrase for our school year this year. If you are new, hello, welcome. I am Amy. I am the mom of 4 boys, and we are unschoolers. Our unschooling adventure usually takes us on adventures. Our lives as unschoolers take us through many extremes. We find joy in sitting at home, watching videos, playing games, but we also enjoy getting out into the world and having experiences, whether it's walking through the woods and stumbling upon an animal carcass or seeing a bald eagle in the sky, or stumbling upon a stream that we didn't know existed. We also like to, well, pre-COVID, we used to like to get out and go to museums, science centers, do big group activities with other homeschoolers in our area. But now, for the past year, we've been at home. We occasionally go to the woods and explore, but those big extravagant trips aren't happening. We're not doing it with groups of friends. We're not going places much further than our backyard. And it was very hard at the beginning because I felt like my kids were lacking. Overnight, they went from this very enriched experience. We were actually at a paleontology museum the day before lockdown was announced. We were staring up at a Tyrannosaurus Rex fossil that had been discovered like in our backyard. Not in our literal backyard, but our provincial backyard. And the next day, everything's closed. And you're stuck at home. And there's this fear that exists, like, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna get through this? So my way of getting through that was to focus on making those little things in life magical. How could we make baking a simple loaf of bread into something more? How could we romanticize tea time into an experience that would fill the place, the void that now existed because we couldn't do the things we wanted to do? So today, I want to take you with me as we explore and as we find the magic in the mundane. We're gonna start off by making some breakfast. Last night I made 2 loaves of bread. That is such a lockdown thing, is it not, to make bread? But honestly, I've been making bread long before lockdown, but lockdown really helped me hone my skills. I've gotten a lot better at making bread with the consistency that lockdown has provided. So we're making some toast. We're gonna make some over easy eggs, some fried eggs for my 5-year-old, because if you make him an over easy egg, he's still gonna make a sandwich and it's gonna get everywhere. So I just fry his egg. Or I inevitably break one of my over easy eggs and that turns into the fried egg that I give him. So we're gonna make breakfast, and then we will see what the day holds. I'm sitting here knitting and he's come up over my shoulder and just drooled on it, and he thinks I'm playing with him. Now he's chasing his tail. Nova, what are you doing? Apparently sock knitting is one way to get a puppy really hyped up. Normally he could care less when I'm knitting, but apparently when I'm knitting, watching a YouTube video and filming, he thinks it is the best. So now I get to change my sweater. So, oh, life with animals. It's fun, isn't it? Anyway, I wasn't actually planning on talking while knitting, but hey, let's back up the camera a little bit. So as I'm sitting here knitting, I love to watch videos or listen to podcasts. And today I'm actually watching a video by Matt Diavella. Let me check to see what the name is. It is called The One Mindset That Changed My Life. And it's interesting because he's talking about it from his own perspective, from starting his YouTube channel, from being a professional filmmaker to being a professional YouTuber. But I feel like there are so many of us who have experienced that one mindset shift that changed our lives forever. And it might not even be something that you're really conscious of, but we've all had those moments. And I think for me, especially with the topic of today's video, with finding magic in the mundane, that was a mindset shift that really changed my life. So often we think we have to do everything perfect, be the best that we possibly can be, and put our best foot forward in everything that we attempt to do. And over this past year, this whole idea of embracing the little things and being more mindful of those little things and finding those little things to be enchanting really helped to change my mindset when it comes to perfectionism. And let me tell you, I am a perfectionist through and through. I'm also a bit of a control freak. I shouldn't say a bit, I am a control freak. A lot of my life has been like putting off things that I've wanted to do because I didn't think I could do them perfectly. But what is perfect? There is no such thing. And so I'm sitting here knitting a sock and talking to you, right? Here's my sock. And I put off knitting socks for the longest time. I have tried to knit socks. Now I knit socks frequently. I usually always have a pair of socks on the knitting needles. But I have been knitting since I was 16. That's 2 decades. Yes, I am 36. And I always wanted to knit socks because I thought they were, so fun. And how amazing is it to be able to knit something that you can wear? But I never did because I never found yarn that was pretty enough, or I kept trying to do different casts on and different heel methods and toe methods and all, and I kept messing up. Maybe there was a hole. If you're not a knitter, this right here, where this is like the heel of the sock, here's the foot, I'm working on the ankle. But right here, for a lot of different socks, depending on how you knit them, you can get a hole there because you're knitting this way. Well, I start at the toe, I'm knit this way, and then you turn the heel and you're knitting this way. So you've got stitches in a row like this, but then stitches in a row like this. And then they meet and you can easily get a hole there. So the first, I don't know, however many socks that I knit had a hole there. And I also started knitting socks with a lot bulkier yarn. This is a fine, it's actually a sock weight yarn. And I started knitting socks with either like a DK weight yarn or a worsted weight yarn. And a hole, when you've got thicker yarn, looks even bigger than a hole with fine yarn. So these holes, I used to think they were gaping holes. And now it never affected the fit of the sock. It never affected the wear of the sock. And I mean, I am not one to wear socks unless I'm wearing shoes or boots. So this part of the sock where the hole would be like right here at your ankle, which is covered by your shoe or your boot. Like, I don't know why I was so self-loathing about it, because I couldn't grasp why I was getting holes there, or I couldn't get the fit right, or, you know, there's so many things that I just talked myself out of making socks for a really long time. And then also switching to sock weight yarn, it's like that's a lot of work. That's a lot of stitches. Like, there are thousands upon thousands of stitches in a sock weight yarn. And knitting socks is one of those crafts where you can buy socks for a lot cheaper than you can knit them. Knitting socks is not a cheap thing to do. I mean, it can be inexpensive. This skein of yarn only costs about $4. And so $4 for a pair of socks is not outrageous, but when you think you can go to a big box store like Walmart and buy 10 socks for $5, then it does seem like, why would you spend hours and hours and hours knitting a pair of socks when you can buy 10 for about the same price and have it be done within moments because they're pre-made. So it really put me off. But then recently, within the last, well, really it's been within the last year that I really picked up knitting socks because, let's face it, I've had the time. There was a shift in my mindset of going into knitting socks with the thought that it's going to cost too much, it's going to take way too much time, there's going to be a hole in it, it's not going to fit right, I'm either going to make it too short, too big, too long. Hi Nova, yes, you've already drooled on me, thank you. You know, there's so many things that you can do wrong when knitting a pair of socks. But then I started knitting and I was like, you know what? What does it matter if I make a mistake? The more holes that I make, the more chances I have to learn why I made the hole and to remedy it. Well, there's no holes in these socks, and these are actually the last socks that I made, and there's no holes in the socks. And actually, there's a little bit of a gap in that one. But this one also hasn't been washed yet. So if you're unfamiliar with knitting, it can kind of even out and fill in a little bit. When you wash it, the yarn blooms a bit, gets a little thicker. So as I've knit more and more socks, I think I've knit, this will be my 4th pair of socks within the since lockdown. And I've fixed my hole issue for the most part. I've learned a lot about how to properly fit my socks, and I've allowed myself to enjoy the process. Before, I was knitting socks for the socks in the end, but now I've started to knit socks just because I want to knit socks. Each stitch is a moment to calm down, a moment to reflect, and a moment to be one with the activity that I am choosing to do. That was an aside that I never expected to happen, and it all started because a dog drooled on my shoulder.
Remember, I was nervous as hell. I was literally shaking in the shower before that first date, and that person wasn't the love of my life. I didn't go on a second date with them, but it was the step in the right direction. And that's exactly what happened when I started my YouTube channel. The first video wasn't amazing, the next few weren't great either, but that first step, just pushing through that fear, anxiety, and doubt, got me to move forward. There are so many forms of...
Hey, did you hear that? A step in the right direction. My dog's playing in the background, I'm sorry. But that's exactly what mindset of life we as in myself and my family, we try and have. Every moment is a step in the right direction. As homeschoolers, as unschoolers, learning to read, you might not be able to read that first time you pick up a book, but even picking up that book is a step in the right direction. The first pair of socks I knit might have been a total fail, but it was a step in the right direction. But anyways, that was my timer. I set myself timers to make sure I don't get too absorbed in what I'm doing. I will knit for hours if I can, but we've got stuff to do. So let's move on. So breakfast is done, cleaned up some dishes. Yes, I still have dog slobber on my shoulder. I also was able to get a pork roast into the slow cooker because I think we're gonna go out on a walk and I don't want to be limited by the time we're out. It is supposed to storm. It's looking a little bit gray outside, but we're gonna try and get out for a walk. We're gonna go down to the creek and we're gonna try and enjoy ourselves before the storm comes. We usually like to really go off and meander through the woods, but I think we will stay somewhat close today just in case it starts raining and we have to run for shelter. So I'm gonna get changed because this is not attractive, but hey, it's fine to be doing dishes. And I will try and get some good footage.
There's no sign.
Yeah? No, there's no sharks.
You going down? I mean, there is no rules for that. Take a video.
might be a little difficult.
It's whenever all the ice melts from the snow, this is a lot higher. This is like up here. See how all these grass is just like...
Feel my hand. That's how cold the water is. What?
I believe...
We are back from our walk and I just had a shower. We didn't actually get rained on. My hair's not wet from rain. I had a shower because I was wearing flip-flops through the woods and my feet got a little dirty, and the air's also just been very dry recently. Like, we really need the rain that is coming. It's not raining yet, but it looks like the skies could open up at any moment. But I felt a little dusty, a little dirty after our hike. So I went and I had a shower. My hair's a mess, but it seems like the gray dries a lot faster than anything else, but that is okay. We had a beautiful walk. I loved the difference in the kind of vibe that was going on. Like, we were very comfortable in what we were wearing, but then across the creek, right on the, I guess, creek bed, I almost said riverbed, but it's a creek. Right across the creek bed was this large expanse of ice and snow. And yet here we were throwing rocks into the river and feeling very comfortable in what we were wearing. If the sun had actually been out, it might have even been hot. But because it was overcast, it wasn't overly hot. And because we were within the forest, the wind from the coming storm wasn't really a factor. Once we got out of the woods and into a bit of a clearing, you could really feel the change in the air coming down off the mountains, and I bet it's gonna storm pretty soon. But we're now home and the kids have asked for 2 activities. My one son wants to make some kind of berry dessert. He originally asked for a pie, but pie crust needs to chill and we don't have that time now. So he went onto Google and found a frozen fruit crumble, because also I don't have any fresh fruit or anything at the moment, but we do have frozen fruit. So he wrote out the recipe. Now, I'm going to assume that this is not going to look like the picture. It's frozen berries, sugar, and some orange juice. Like, there's nothing to thicken it up. So we'll see. I mean, I'm sure it'll be tasty, but it might be more like a liquid fruit jelly thing with crumble on top, but we'll see. I love allowing the kids freedom to do this. Like, I just give them a recipe card and say, find the recipe you want to make, write it down. So we did. And if it works, we'll put it into our recipe binder. If not, maybe we'll make some changes, like even adding some flour or some cornstarch might help, just to help thicken the base. We'll see. It might turn out just fine. I've never made it before. So we're gonna do that. And then my other son has asked to play snakes and ladders. So we're going to assemble the crumble, and then we are going to play snakes and ladders. So that'll be fun. So like predicted, the fruit crumble did not exactly turn out as planned, but it was still delicious. It was just a little messier than we had anticipated, but it was still delicious. And I think things like that really kind of solidify the whole point of this video, of finding magic in the mundane and just trying, right? We wanted something sweet for after dinner, and we tried something, we experimented, and while it might not have worked exactly as planned, it was still a nice dessert. And we were able to discuss what we will change next time, things that we will try, and in the end, it didn't really matter. If we hadn't tried anything, then we would have been sitting there with no dessert. I mean, no dessert isn't the end of the world, but when you want something sweet, it is worth trying. We could have done a, tried and true recipe. I have many dessert recipes in our little recipe box. We've got all sorts of different kinds of cookies, of cakes, of pie. There's an apple crumble recipe in there. But he wanted to try something new, so we did. We experimented, and he's not upset with the results, and neither am I. We tried something new, we learned, we experimented, and most importantly, we had fun doing it. There is something so fun about just getting messy in the kitchen and not allowing mistakes or failures to interrupt that process. We all learn and we grow and we transform through the experiences that we have. And you can let experiences bring you down. I could have said, oh, we're never going to try this again because this was terrible and this was a fail. But for one thing, it wasn't that bad. It still tasted good. But, my apprehensions at the beginning were right. I knew it wasn't really going to turn out the way we envisioned it. And part of that is not the recipe's fault. We do live at altitude and we live in a very dry climate. I have to change recipes all the time. And it's also kind of why I hesitate to put a lot of recipes out, because if I share with you my bread recipe, if you live in a humid climate, you're gonna think that that recipe is so sticky and so wet, and it might not bake the same, because I typically lower baking things by like 25 degrees. Like cookies, if they say bake at 350, I usually bake at 325. I cut down the amount of flour, or I'll increase the amount of liquid, because it's just through trial and error of living here for the past 7 years, I've learned things. And then just also been baking for a very long time. There's things that when you read a recipe, you can kind of understand how it's going to turn out. You can kind of picture what the end might be, and then you already kind of have an idea in your head about what you might need to change or what you might need to tweak to have it fit your tastes. And that only comes with trial and error, that only comes with experience. And again, when you can find those moments of trial and error, of failure, of, you know, whatever you might want to call it, of even just mundane moments of whatever you're happening to experience in your life, even just sitting in a chair and watching a YouTube video. You can see that as very mundane. You can see that as just sitting there doing nothing. But it's so much more than that. It is learning, it's experiencing, it is expanding your knowledge, it's relaxing, it is decompressing, it is de-stressing. There's so much that even those little mundane moments in our life allow us to do. You know, if you are very strung up over something that happened and you just sit with that negative energy, we'll just say negative at this moment. If you sit in that negative energy, then you go to do something else, that negative energy follows you, right? It's like when you're having a bad day, then you get stuck in traffic on your way to work, and then you burn your dinner when you get home, and then you can't sleep. And it all just kind of compiles, right? It gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then all of a sudden you're having a terrible day. And over the past year, I feel like there's been a lot of potentially terrible days. But by focusing on the moments and the experiences as opposed to the whole day, the whole week, the whole year. Because I mean, I know I'm not the only one who has said 2020 was a dumpster fire, right? Like there's a lot of people, there's a lot of memes going around of the dumpster going down the flooded road and it's on fire, right? But even though 2020 didn't end up being the year a lot of us thought it was going to be, I found there were so many special moments, so many special times, no matter how mundane they were, no matter how minuscule. You know, just waking up in the morning and getting a hug from my children and really allowing myself to take time to breathe in that experience and allow it to overcome me, right? So often we even just forget to experience a hug. And not being able to hug, you know, people outside of your immediate household for the past year, it's really allowed me to find this new sense of importance and gratitude and just a new magical quality to just the experience of a simple hug. I mean, a hug's just a hug, right? Until you allow it to be so much more. And I mean, do I have this experience in everyday life, in every moment? No, of course not. There are moments when shit hits the fan and I lose my temper and things go wrong, things go sideways, things are just upside down. But when I come back to center, when I come back to the idea of living an enchanted life, finding magic in those little moments, then I find it so much easier to exist in that energy and to ground myself in that energy. When I feel like everything is shit, then that's what the day turns out to be. But even when I can think and look outside, like it just started to rain. And sometimes it's like, oh, it's raining. I was going to go outside. Now it's raining, right? But now it's raining. That's okay. I got outside earlier. I mean, I do have to take my dog for another pee soon, but I have a raincoat and it may stop raining, but we need the rain. It's very dry. We've already had a bunch of grass fires this year, and so I welcome the rain. As much as I don't enjoy a rainy day, a stormy day, there's still magic in what you can do on a rainy day. hey, you can go rescue worms. I used to love doing that as a kid, and that's something that as an adult I don't even think of anymore, right? I don't walk down while having somewhere to go, because so often as an adult I walk for the place to go instead of just walking. But I used to always stop and rescue the worms that were in the puddles. And perhaps I need to do more of that. In fact, I think that's what I'll do. I think the kids and I are going to go put our boots on, put our raincoats on, and go rescue the worms. I hope you all have a fantastic day. We're going to go rescue worms, eat some dinner, and I'll see you next time. Bye.